watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt Godwin, and I'm always happy to see our next guest on the show, Scott Silverman, CEO of Confidential Recovery. Welcome back to the show, Scott.
How are you, Mary? Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. Love having you on the show. Hey, I think I just saw on Facebook that you're celebrating an anniversary today. Is that correct?
I'm celebrating with you. Yeah, of course. 41 years to my lovely bride, Michelle, my best friend, who completes me every day, whether I like it or not.
Well, I love that. I felt very honored that you were going to come on our show on your big special day. I don't know how she feels about that, but we always love seeing you. And you know, before I get into all the things I want to talk about with you, I was just in Vegas over the past weekend, and there was a moment, you know, I had a lot of flashbacks from my previous days before I was in recovery. But there was a group of people, you know, cops and different, maybe not cops, but bouncers and people at the club outside of the Omnia, which is the big club inside Caesars. And there I looked, and there was a young gal, skinny, passed out against the wall. And I immediately thought to myself, she's ODing on something. And it was a very scary moment, being a mom of young girls. And we talk about on the show a lot of times where it's like the recreational drug use of yore is no longer, because we don't know what is in these drugs that kids are using. And maybe she just drank too much, and I don't really know. I hope that she's okay. But the image of her has not left my mind. Slumped up against the wall, skinny, pale, and it was just, you know, I guess, glad to have you on the show again today to just talk about this more, because I feel like we can't talk about it enough, to help spread the word about the things that we can be doing as citizens, and are there things we can be doing? And then I sent you last night a link to some legislation that's coming out, and it's bipartisan legislation, which I love, because this has no party lines. Democrats, Republicans, white, black, male, female, whatever, are subject to this crisis. So can we talk about this for a little bit, and how things are progressing in your world?
Sure. Which part of that you want to cover? You want to cover what, you know, legislative leaders are trying to do and hoping to do?
Yeah,
you know,
let's start with that, because I'd like to know, you know, your thoughts on it. Is it something that will help? It's the Modernizing Opioid Treatment Access Act, which sounds really great. So but you know, you never know if these things really are or not. And, you know, so what is it? And do you think it's a step in the right direction?
well, from what I read, and thanks for sending it over. By the way, when you throw 5 subjects at me and go, where do you want to start? You have to kind of let me know, and I'll follow your lead.
This is my MO, Scott.
Okay, you know, being ADHD, I jump around. I just want to, I won't miss much. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So, you know, what I understand, and I would really classify what they're trying to do as harm reduction or medication-assisted treatment. And if I'm not mistaken, methadone was the primary medication that they were talking about. And methadone as a harm reduction medication, it's kind of like Suboxone, or now, you know, buprenorphine, as a way to treat somebody who is suffering from the addiction. And methadone is kind of like, has been exponentially a replacement for opioids, i.e. heroin is where methadone really seemed to really get its growth. It's federally regulated. It's not easy to get access to, but once you do, you can get it and be on it for long periods of time. What I'm concerned about, and I'm seeing some of these initiatives, a lot of it's coming out because of this major, I don't know, $50 billion settlement that's going on. It's dispersing dollars across the country. Is people are picking up poison, and they're accidentally overdosing. So treatment isn't even an option for somebody, obviously, who overdoses and dies. So I think we need to move a few steps either forward or sideways or backwards to get the information to people to make more informed decisions. Because, you know, there was just recently a major bust. I think it was 2,200 pounds, I want to say, of cocaine going into Australia. So what's happening is the cartels are relentless, and they're not going to stop making the drugs, Mary. They're, you know, there's so much money in it that they're going to keep pouring it into the countries where they can get a recipient or a consumer that's willing to take it. So I think we need to really move the needle much quicker and, declare this as a public health crisis and get the attention to what's going on, like we did with COVID. So it is something in real time that locally, statewide, regionally, and nationally across all party lines is a major focus.
So I feel like there's three different buckets. There is a treatment bucket of how we're going to help the people to get them in recovery and treated, right? And then there's also things like harm reduction, which is the safe injection sites or the test strips or these other tools that are helping people to not OD and die, right? And that's just going to say, hey, the people that are using are going to use, so let's keep them safe. But then there's also something that needs to happen in the beginning side of things before people get to that place, or how do we help low-income families and or families that are in the cycle of abuse and abuse to get them out of it, right? So it's like many different phases, and it's almost overwhelming, but I do feel like something like this legislation makes me feel good. At least they're trying to do something.
And I think let's go back even a step further. Let's make a big bucket, and that is prevention and education.
Yeah.
Prevention and education. Because if we have prevention and we have education, maybe we can prevent people from having to get to the point where they're overdosing or abusing, if you will, and they can get into traditional support earlier on rather than after the fact. I mean, I just talked to a family yesterday as a 41-year-old son who's been at this, he says they had his mom and him on the phone. He says he's been at it since 26. She says since he's 19. So there's 7 years in his brain that he just kind of eliminated because he doesn't want to think about it. Hence the disease of denial. So that prevention and education piece is critical. So as long as the government's going to come up with these tools, harm reduction tools and or medication-assisted treatment, part of the delivery system has to be the education and prevention piece, because to spend billions of dollars to put together these infrastructures and yet still not have people be able to navigate to them or potentially prevent them from even having to navigate to them, because most of the big money that's these settlement numbers that I'm seeing go to is they're building new facilities, which is great. But the healthcare clinical expertise is so far behind the 8 ball right now. They're talking about needing, just in San Diego, 18,000 new clinical experts in the next 5 years. So, and it's not a field, you talk to the medical experts, they're not going into this field of addiction treatment. It's a tough one. It's not easy. And there's a lot of restrictions on what doctors can do that, they find frustrating. So we need to get the prevention education piece, in my opinion, upfront in everything that we do.
Well, and then doctors maybe not prescribing opioids at the drop of a hat and at every second that they can, and actually being themselves, internists and general practitioners understanding addiction in a different way than maybe they currently do. And then starting in the education at the teenager high school level. But we all know teenagers, how well they listen. And you gotta go, you almost gotta let them try it, but we can talk till we're blue in the face. And they've got to walk their own path. But at least we could start there. And I know people are doing that. Rocky, and I forget, Heron was his name, right, who I met, former DEA who goes to high schools and talks about it. And I'm wondering if he's seeing any positive results from that.
I know, I talk to Rocky all the time. I know that Rocky is seeing, young people approach him at these presentations, but, he can talk to, up to 1,500, 2,000 students in one fell swoop. And, if he gets 3 or 4 to come up to him, he's going to help participate in maybe helping saving their life, or maybe one of their siblings, or maybe one of their parents. So that's real helpful. But Rocky's one person. And right now, according to the, federal government, CDC, there's 40 million people in our country right now that are exposed to and are involved with a lot of abuse and or direct addiction issues. And only 10% of those will seek help. And, I like to share that the data shows for every person that's suffering, that's impaired, they're negatively impairing 7 people a day. So if you take the 40,000 times 7, that's 280 million people in our country right now that are impacted by either the disease of addiction or people that are self-medicating or people that are abusing mood altering substances to take care of whatever it is they think they need help with. And that's not an organic way to get better. And it doesn't really make anybody feel better for any length of time. So if 280 million people are impacted by this, we should be talking about this like the weather.
Yeah.
Morning, noon, and night.
I agree.
Every segment.
Well, that's why I keep having you back all the time. And I love that you joined us on your anniversary. Thank you so much for being here. You're a wealth of information and of compassion. Scott Silverman, CEO and founder of Confidential Recovery, confidentialrecovery.com. Thank you so much for being here, Scott, and everyone at home. Thank you for watching America Trends. We've got more right after this quick break. And in the meantime, find us on social media at America Trends TV.